If you've spent the last few evenings scrolling through benchmark videos, reading endless forum threads, and still feel like you're choosing between a good enough laptop and a future-proof machine, this review is here to clear the fog. The link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I'm about to walk through is the 2025 14-inch MacBook Pro with Apple's brand new M5 chip, the model that's being pitched as a gaming-capable powerhouse while still promising the classic MacBook battery life and portability you know from previous years. Let's start with the core question that haunts anyone looking at a gaming laptop. Will it actually run the games I care about without throttling, and will it stay quiet enough to not drown out my own commentary? The M5's 10-core CPU and 10-core GPU are a step up from the M2 line, and on paper that translates to roughly a 30% jump in raw graphics throughput. In practice, I tried a mix of titles **Fortnite** at 1080p, Elden Ring on medium settings, and Valorant on ultra. Fortnite ran at a steady 90+ frames, which is more than enough for a smooth competitive experience. Valorant hit 120 frames per second, keeping the motion crisp and the input lag negligible. Elden Ring was the real test, with the display set to its native 30241964 resolution. The game settled around 5,560 frames per second on medium-high presets. That's respectable for a thin and light chassis, but it also shows the limits. If you demand max settings at native resolution, you'll start seeing dips. Heat is the next piece of the puzzle. Many thin laptops compensate for a powerful GPU with aggressive fan curves that become a constant whine. The MacBook Pro's fan is surprisingly restrained. While Elden Ring was pushing the GPU, the fan spun up to a medium roar, audible but not distracting. In a quiet room it was noticeable, but in a typical gaming session with background music it blended into the soundscape. After about an hour of continuous play, the chassis was warm to the touch, especially around the keyboard, but it never reached the scorching levels you sometimes see on Windows-based gaming rigs. That's a practical win if you often game in shared spaces or small apartments. Speaking of the keyboard, the Magic Keyboard with its refined scissor mechanism feels different from the clicky, travel-heavy keys you see on many dedicated gaming laptops. The travel is short, the actuation is smooth, and the backlight is bright enough to see in dim rooms. For fast-paced shooters, the feel is a bit less clicky than a mechanical board, but the low profile actually helps reduce fatigue during long sessions. I didn't notice any ghosting even when hammering multiple keys for combos in League of Legends, which suggests the matrix is robust enough for most gaming inputs. Battery life is where the MacBook Pro still shines, even when you're gaming. Apple claims all-day usage, and in real-world terms that translates to about 67 hours of mixed-use email, coding, a couple of YouTube videos, and a short gaming burst. When I launched Fortnite for a 45-minute session, the battery dropped roughly 12%, which is far better than the 30+% you see on many Windows gaming laptops with comparable performance. If you're planning to game on a train or a coffee shop outlet, you'll still have enough juice for a few hours of play before you need to plug in. Portability is a double-edged sword for gaming machines. The 14-inch MacBook Pro weighs just under 3 pounds and is only about 0.6 inches thick. You can slide it into a regular backpack without the bulk of a 17-inch desktop replacement. However, the trade-off is the thermal envelope we already touched on. Because the chassis is so slim, you won't see the same sustained high performance as a bulkier laptop that can house larger heatsinks and more aggressive cooling. If you plan to sit at a desk for marathon gaming sessions, a larger, purpose-built Windows laptop or a desktop might give you a higher ceiling. If you value a machine that can double as a content creation workstation, a travel companion, and a capable gamer, the MacBook Pro hits a sweet spot. Now, let's talk about the display, because it's one of the most distinctive parts of this model. The 14.2-inch liquid Retina XDR panel delivers a peak brightness of 1600 nits and a contrast ratio that makes dark scenes in Shadow of the Tomb Raider look almost cinematic. HDR content pops, and even without HDR, the color accuracy is superb, great for anyone who also does photo or video editing. The downside? The native resolution is a hefty 30241964, which forces games to render more pixels than a typical 1080p laptop. That's why Elden Ring didn't hit 60 frames per second on ultra settings. If you're okay with dropping down to the 19201080 scaling mode, you'll regain a few frames without sacrificing much visual fidelity on a 14-inch screen. Who should consider buying this MacBook Pro? First, creators who already live in the Apple ecosystem and need a machine that can run video editing software, Xcode, or design tools without a hitch. The unified memory architecture means the 16 GB you get is shared efficiently between CPU,